Many of the stories about iron and iron making in the region coalesce around one particular tree, Kaija. It is not only the size of this tree that is remarkable, it has survived the axe of the farmer and the charcoal maker, because, so the legends say, it was the symbolic center of the making of iron. In stories remembered by the elders of the Haya, a distant king had once constructed a tower here, a tower of iron that reached to the heavens. Bayakela Rusinga is an oral historian descended from a royal line.
This tree is Kaija, the place where there was a forge built in Rugomaramahe's palace. They used to forge tools like spears and other tools which were used to construct the iron tower intended to reach the sun. The tower fell and crumbled. Part of it fell at Katerero. The second splinter fell at Nkimbo, where there is still a tree at that spot at Kanyangereko. Yes, the tower crumbled.
This myth is so powerful that variants of it are also found in the repertoire of non-royal historians like Augustine Kayandoa.
When the Smiths had made half the tower, the king said that he also wanted to demonstrate the skill he had acquired during his long exile. He climbed up the iron tower. He forged the iron and joined the pieces together until he went so far that he could no longer see what was on earth, and neither could he see God. God was nowhere to be seen. God realized that man was becoming too powerful, so he dismantled the tower, and the iron from the tower fell as far as Katerero. Kaija is the word that comes from the word for an anvil or a forge. Here is where they used to forge iron. In earlier times, smiths would forge spears, hoes, knives, and axes. That was the place called Kaija. The king used to distribute some of the tools to his subjects to use.
Peter Schmidt had collected these stories and sifted their meanings. He suspected that their mythical surfaces concealed a concrete past. More importantly, a past that could be verified by scientific investigation.
When we first came to this site in 1969 with elders who brought me here and told me the story of the Iron Tower. And while we were in the presence of Kaija tree, which is behind me here, they also told me that this is the place where the Smiths forged iron. And several variants of the story say that this is where the Smiths forged iron to make the Iron Tower. So one of the first things we did on this site was to put down a test excavation right here, based on the testimony of the elders. And what was particularly stunning and really exciting was that at 1 meter in depth, we found an early Iron Age forge.
An ancient forge more than 2,000 years old. A tree of iron. These were images so powerful that later kings had to appropriate them in order to legitimize their own power and to control the making of iron. Thus, there were stories linking the sacred Iron Age sites to a 17th century usurper king, Rugamora Mae.
After we finished excavations at the Kaija tree, the tree of iron, we came to this place because the elders had told us that these bricks you see here in the ground, just above the surface of the pathway, were the bricks of King Rugamora. So we were curious to find out exactly what kind of bricks these were. What we found was a mass of bricks about 1 meter in diameter. And these bricks were mixed with pieces of slag, and when we later analyzed these materials, we ran heat tests on the slag. We found the slag had been heated to 1400 degrees centigrade, which was really surprising, given what we had thought about technology in Africa up to that particular point.
Furnaces older than anyone had expected, and internal temperatures higher than they had any right to be. These were the elements of Schmidt's puzzle. Why was this important? Because if the ancient Africans had indeed been consistently smelting at such high temperatures, then the product must have been radically different from the wrought iron and low-grade steel produced elsewhere in the ancient world. Within sight of the Kaija tree, Schmidt and his associates surveyed other promising sites for traces of ancient iron furnaces. Schmidt now suspected that the ancient smelters had discovered a way of using these high temperatures to make carbon steel directly in the furnace. And if this were true, it would be a direct challenge to the myth of the inferiority of African technology. But how could he prove it? He knew that the answer lay in the design and operation of the furnaces. But of these temporary above-ground structures, only fragments remained. Iron had been smelted here, however, as recently as the 1920s, and Schmidt hoped that the ancient techniques had never really died out. If there were clues to the ancient technology in the operation of these early 20th century furnaces, Schmidt was going to have to find someone who remembered how to build one. Historians speculate, on the basis of very little evidence, that the knowledge of iron making came to West and East Africa from the north, from Carthage, or the Nile Basin, sometime between 700 and 200 BC. Most historians, Schmidt felt, were preoccupied with the problem of where iron making originated, rather than investigating invention and innovation in the African technology itself. And now, in the remote Tanzanian village of Nyungwe, west of Lake Victoria, Schmidt thought he had found what he needed: a group of men who remembered how to smelt iron.